those notes was pretty eclipsey. Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. This is Gemini Brett of More Than Astrology, here with Eclipse Astrology Part 2, I'll call it, Astronomy, Eclipse Astronomy, Shadow Play. So I'm glad you could join me today. We're going to look at why eclipses happen. Why is not every new moon, when moon comes between Earth and Sun, a solar eclipse? Why is every full moon, when moon is on the other side of Earth from Sun, not a lunar eclipse? Why is Earth's shadow not on the moon every time we have a full moon, right? All right, so let me share my screen, and first we'll gaze at this beauty as I find my way to enter the dragon. All right, why are dragons and serpents so often found in symbolism when it comes to moon and sun? In the first part of this series, I spoke about cosmology and the three parts of the philosophy and shared a bit of my own connection or translation of the Emerald Tablets of Hermes and how I feel in my own personal cosmology that Earth is matter, that sun is spirit, a subjective term, but I mean the one thing, and that moon is soul, which reflects that one into a personal experience so we can have in our incarnation here in matter, Earth, and play the Earth game. So you can check out part 1 of the series, Eclipse Cosmology, if you'd like. It's up on YouTube. You'll find my YouTube page by searching Gemini Brett. And I hope you'll go over there, check it out, give it a like, subscribe to the page. All right, so serpent symbolism with these three things: Earth, Moon, and Sun. This is from the Ripley Scroll, a great alchemical image here from Kircher. The Philippines, the dragon that eats the moon. Rahu, the great Asura, shadow being who eats the sun during the time of the eclipse. This is from one of the greatest tales, The Churning of the Milk Ocean, a Hindu tale. You know, I think I'll post in the descriptions when I'm finished here a link to my SoundCloud page, which you can also find by searching Gemini Brett on SoundCloud. My dear friend and master medicine musician Maria Stark and I last year recorded a journey about this story, doing a little storytelling and speaking at fun poetically over some live music, so you can hear that at length. But I'll tell you a bit about this tale. Basically, the Asuras and the Devas, the shadow and light, got together to churn the milk ocean in search of the Amrita, the sacred elixir of immortality, which was at the bottom of this ocean. And to churn it, the shadow on one side and the light on the other, with Mount Meru as the churning pole and the serpent Vasuki, they had to turn this ocean. I mean, shadow on one side, light on the other. Does this not seem like the Earth? And the Earth, of course, spins on its axis. But what churns Earth's oceans but moon and sun, right? Bringing us tides. So anyway, very beautiful, and long story short, they succeeded and the Amrita was achieved. And then Vishnu played this trick because he did not want the Asuras to attain immortality. So he disguised himself as this beautiful enchantress Mohini. And with the Devas sitting on one side and the Asuras on the other, he gave the goods to the Devas, but then gave some substitute to the Asuras, except for one Asura who was called Rahu, had this thing for the light, and he had this attraction for Surya, the sun, and Chandra, the moon, who had been born during the churning, actually. And Rahu got up from the ranks of the Asuras and went and sat between Chandra and Surya, and his cup was filled, and he drank of this sweet Amrita, this sacred elixir. And just as he did, Chandra and Surya, sun and moon, realized this guy's not like us and ratted him out to Mohini, who, being Vishnu, threw a chakra that decapitated Rahu's head, from his body. But he had already drunk of this elixir and thereby was immortal. So Rahu became two beings, the head of the demon or the dragon, Rahu, and its tail, Ketu, which we symbolize astrologically like this. The north lunar node and the south lunar node, we say, the head of the serpent and the tail of the serpent. So Rahu has it out to seek revenge against the sun and the moon. And what a solar eclipse is Rahu's revenge. So Rahu eats the sun, but fortunately he's been decapitated. So shortly thereafter, the sun passes through the back of his neck. I mean, interestingly, somehow the tail can eat the sun too, or they can also sometimes snack on the moon. All right, so these lunar nodes, what are they? Astrologically, astronomically, that's what we want to look at today, the nodes of the moon, because this is where eclipses come to play. This is a little thing I did of creating the nodal images out of crescents, soul, and circles, spirit, moon, and sun. And we see the snaking path, which is really what the nodes and the bendings are about. King Cobra here, and look at the marking on the back of the hood. The serpent's tail, we say, Ketu. It's rumored, however, that this symbol that we currently use for the south node, which was once called the descending node, that this symbol was once used for the ascending node, or the head of the serpent. Who is to say? But I will say that while the other glyphs, sun, moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, traditional glyphs of the planets are all created out of the three parts of the philosophy, the circle of spirit, the crescent of soul, and the cross of matter. It's in a way not true for these lunar node glyphs unless we see them like this. And when we do, we can actually see what they're all about. So this is a wonderful image that a wonderful being named Anna Zaharia co-created with me for Arts of the Chart. And here we're looking at, obviously not to scale, but Earth orbiting the sun and moon orbiting the Earth. Now, first of all, let me say it's not that simple, okay? Because moon and Earth are actually kind of in a binary dance about the sun. It's a beautiful dynamic thing. But if we want to use this model, moon orbiting Earth, Earth orbiting the sun, that's kind of what we're showing this image here, okay? And it's very much exaggerated here, but the point of the thing is that the moon's orbit of Earth, that plane, is not parallel to the Earth-Sun orbit. The Earth-Sun orbit is called the ecliptic plane, right? So if I was walking circles around this computer, orbiting this computer, the ground would be the ecliptic, right? It's the plane of the dance of me and the computer, or more importantly, of the Earth and the sun, right? If we extend that plane out towards infinity in all directions, we encounter the constellations of the zodiac. So from Earth's point of view, sun is always held by one of those star groups, and it never leaves this plane, right? It is the Earth-Sun plane. It's the plane of our, what's known as the secondary motion, the annual motion, the orbit. But the moon is not confined to that plane. The moon can get about 5 degrees in 15 minutes on average above or below that plane. And every month as the moon orbits the Earth, it is snaking above and below the path of the sun, cruising in a sense above and below the zodiac. Now, this would be the ascending node, where moon moves from terrestrial latitudes closer to Earth than the sun and ascends up to the heavens. And then the descending node, where it comes back down again. And every month it reaches the ascending node and goes up. Halfway between the ascending node and the descending node, moon reaches the bending. Okay, so we could say north node and northern bending, and south node and southern bending, like that, right? Head of the snake, the back of the snake, the tail of the snake, the belly of the snake. But if that's true, well, what we see is that it's not really this motion. It's doing that curving motion, but in a circle. There's two crossing points, and those are the points of the nodes. Now, importantly, we talk about in astrology often that the lunar nodes speak to the path of the soul. And again, I'd refer you back to the first video of the series where I speak about the cosmology and this idea of spirit and soul and matter, where I'm in my own personal cosmology, and I reserve the right to change my mind tonight. But at this time, where I feel that sun is our local representative for the one thing, spirit and the moon's function incarnationally is to reflect that one thing into an individual expression, soul, so we can have an experience here in the earth game. Well, if moon is descending from the heavens past the realm of spirit down to earth, and that's the descending node, we can feel the incarnational idea of that, spirit descending into matter. And then at the ascending node, we go back up, right? The ascension path, which of course is not what it's all about. We want to do these things in balance. And in a way, we do. Because in the tale of two hemispheres, between the hemispheres north and south, the zodiac appears to be flipped. I mean, I'll just do this, okay? Let's say this is Orion. All right, from where you're looking, it's like, the pinky's closer to you. And from where I'm looking, the thumb is closer to me. If you go from the northern hemisphere to the southern hemisphere, I'm used to seeing Orion like this, but if I go to the southern hemisphere, it looks like that. So if the moon, for example, is above Orion in the northern hemisphere, which would be northern latitude for the moon, in the southern hemisphere, it's still northern latitude, but it looks closer to Earth. So in one hemisphere, the north node, and this is the northern hemisphere, ascends. In the southern hemisphere, the north node actually descends. And astrologically, we don't say you need to flip the script between the hemispheres. Despite seasonal opposition, there's a good reason for this. And the nodes and some other contemplations are what helped cure me of my own cynicism about why aren't we switching things. I'm going to share that a little bit later. But back to the dragons and snakes for now. Okay, so here's a heliocentric or sun-centered image of moon snaking above and below the sun's path, or I should say north. This is North Pole at the top. So the moon in this image is in northern latitude, and the moon in this image is about it's a waning half moon. About a week later, it will be a new moon between Earth and Sun. I hope you can see that here, the arrow of the moon's direction. The arrow of Earth's orbit about the sun as well. So about a week after this image, this snapshot, moon between Earth and Sun, and it will be close enough to K2, the south lunar node, to be a solar eclipse. We're going to talk about why that is. And it will then head to southern latitude. Okay, here's another image. This is from a geocentric perspective. If we're on Earth, right? And we're looking at the orbit of the sun from the Earth, which is the ecliptic plane, which really is the path of sun through the zodiac as we see it on Earth, even though it's really a function of Earth orbiting sun on that same plane. Moon is on a different plane. And every month we see moon crossing above and below the sun's path. So you see why there is this serpent symbolism and why we use that marking on the cobra's head to denote one of the lunar nodes, right? Okay. So this nodal happening, why is not every new moon a solar eclipse and every full moon a lunar eclipse? And the answer is because latitude. So our charts show longitude, like 25 degrees Aries or, 19 degrees Leo, whatever. That's longitude. That's where the sun is on the ecliptic plane. And we look at where the moon is on the ecliptic plane too. It looks like my camera's maybe hiding this date, but this was in December, I think December 17th, 2017, a Sagittarius new moon. And you can see how far north or of the sun's plane the moon is at this point. Venus is close to it. Saturn has northern latitude. Mercury has northern latitude. because all planets have their own orbital dance. They're not restricted to the Earth-Sun plane, the ecliptic, okay? So at this time, the moon had very significant northern latitude. When it came between Earth and Sun, from the northern hemisphere's point of view, it was above the sun, and so no eclipse for you. We don't see the moon, it's blinded by the light. But here we come into January and February. I wonder if I can move my camera so we can see these dates. I think that's working. And those were eclipses. And here we come into June and now July. That's a solar eclipse, lunar eclipse. This is a solar eclipse, the triple eclipse season that we're coming into, beginning, as I'm recording on July 11th, 2018 right now, beginning tomorrow. But basically, sun has to be near one of the crossing points here of moon and sun's path for the new moons and full moons to activate eclipses, for us to visibly see the syzygy, which means the alignment of the three things. In this case, Earth, moon, and sun, right? Either moon between Earth and sun for solar eclipse, or Earth between sun and moon for a lunar eclipse. So notice that also the crossing points, right? So there's sun at the south lunar node, where the moon here crosses from northern to southern latitude, and there's the moon going back north and south. This thing's moving fast. It's Stellarium software. But those nodes, they also move and they retrograde throughout the zodiac. And so now I'm moving like years at a time, or maybe months at a time, it looks like. But you can see the crossing points. They're moving clockwise, which is retrograde through the zodiac. And it's a period of 18 and a half years. It's actually 18.618 years that the nodes in a retrograde fashion transit the zodiac. And when they do, the bendings shift too. And that brings in some of the beauty of the lunar standstill cycle. I think this is enough of that for now. This is something from a longer presentation that I gave at an astrology conference last year. All right, so these nodes, most importantly, from Earth's point of view, they are the crossing points of the paths of sun and moon. So whatever that cosmology in your realm, what is sun? What is moon? Well, what is it when they are together, when they are one thing? Because that's what the nodes represent. And while by phase, the moon, new moon, full moon, every 29 and a half days, right? Even in less time, at about a month, the moon is doing this with the sun, right? So this is longitude, phase, aspects in the zodiac, and this is latitude. Sun's latitude is always 0 degrees because latitude is measured from the ecliptic, and the ecliptic is defined by the Earth-Sun path. So from Earth's point of view, sun is always on that, right? But the moon is not. And so the moon's latitude every month snaking above and below the sun. For Saturn, who has a 29.5-year orbit, it's 29.5 years from North Node, which for Saturn's in Cancer, and Northern bending in Libra for Saturn, South Node in Capricorn for Saturn, Southern bending in Aries for Saturn, also for Jupiter and for Pluto. And one of the most fascinating thing about tomorrow's eclipse, the first of the 2018 triple eclipse, is that it's perfectly aligned also to Pluto, because Pluto, for the first time in 250 years about, will be crossing his southern node. I'm going to get into that in videos about the eclipses specifically as I move on. I'd rather keep this general as eclipse astronomy so it can be witnessed at any time. All right, so these nodes, and the idea of North Node as like kind of the ascending thing and South Node as the descending thing, understand that we call them now North Node and South Node instead of ascending node and descending node, because in the Northern Hemisphere, the North Node is the ascending place. But because the zodiac is flipped the other way, the Southern Hemisphere, the North Node is the descending and the South Node is the ascending. However, and this is very important, and this to me is the astronomical and very nature-based key of why we do not need to flip the tropical zodiac between hemispheres despite seasonal opposition, or despite the truth like this, that a planet's north node goes up for the northern hemisphere or down for the southern hemisphere. The reason is this: the sun is moving towards Vega. We've known about this for a long time, and you can research this by checking out the apex of the sun's way. Why do we know about this? Okay, well, with the sun moving towards Vega, that means Earth, right? The whole crew of our solar system is moving in that direction. You know, when you're driving and the road in front of you opens up and the road behind you closed down, well, that's how we know. And we've known since the 1700s, because the stars around Vega very slowly are separating from one another in our view, because we're moving in that direction. And the stars on the opposite side of the sky, which are around Sirius, are slowly closing in on one another. Okay. Well, why does this have anything to do with why the tropical zodiac functions the same for both hemispheres? Because our tropical zodiac, which we very mistakenly too often call seasonal, actually is a result of the same thing that the seasons are a result of. And that is the directions. So there'll be more videos coming out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Gemini Brett at YouTube, and you'll see some videos that will be addressing this 13th sign thing in galactic alignment, very importantly, but also we'll show this in greater detail and show why the zodiac is directional and why the cardinal signs, for example, are named after the cardinal directions. But what I'll just express here is that Vega, where we are moving towards as its system, never sets at Earth's North Pole. Sirius never rises at Earth's North Pole. Vega never rises at Earth's South Pole. Sirius never sets at Earth's South Pole. What does that mean? We'll pause and contemplate. This would be the best way to enter that key. But the answer in the back of the book is this: we are moving towards what we here on Earth called north. Not due north, that's the star Polaris. Vega at one point in time, and it said during the golden age 13,000 years ago and 13,000 years from now, is the North Star. But generally speaking, it's in the northern sky, and we're moving away from the south and towards the north. What does that mean? Like north nodes, where a planet crosses from southern latitude to northern latitude, whether it's Uranus's north node in Gemini, or the moon's north node, which is currently in Leo, when a planet crosses at its north node, it is literally moving towards the direction of the future. And when it crosses the south node, it is literally going back towards, in our view, the places that Earth has come from. So one thing we'll often say about north node and south node is future and past. And I'll just say astrologically, this really wants to be more of an astronomy video, but astrologically, be very careful and wary of astrologers who tell you to ditch your south node and your past stuff and go towards the north node and the future stuff alone. How can we know where we're going if we don't understand where we're coming from? We bring, shamanically speaking, medicine into this world that we will carry with us towards the destination point, all right? Grow in both directions. So the south and the north node, equally important. One time a year when the sun is at the north node, we will experience north node solar eclipses and south node lunar eclipses. That's what it's about to go down right now. When the sun about 6 months later or 6 months before, and about is a key term here, the nodal year is actually about 346 days and change, not 365, for reasons I think I'll explain in another video down the road where we speak about eclipse mathemagics. But when the sun is at the north node, the solar eclipses are going to be north node eclipses. And the lunar eclipses, the moon will be opposite the sun for full moon. At the south node, there'll be south node eclipses. And about half a year later, or half a year before, when the sun is at the south node, we'll have south node solar eclipses and moon, full moon opposite north node lunar eclipses, right? That would have been the better image for that wrap. So we enter eclipse seasons twice a year, and you can tell whether or not this is happening when you look at an astrology chart. Just see if sun is close to either the north or the south lunar node. When it is at the time of a full moon, moon on the opposite side of Earth from sun, moon rising at sunset and setting at sunrise, moon will be shadowed by the Earth. Now, Earth is much bigger than moon. Not too much, surprisingly. The moon, we say, is about a quarter the size of Earth in diameter. The ratio is actually 3/11, which is a very magical thing. That's a tale for another time. So the moon's radius is 3/11 that of Earth's. And so Earth's shadow is much bigger than the moon. And so when there's a lunar eclipse, anywhere it's night and the clouds allow, everyone on Earth sees the lunar eclipse happening. Some will see it as the moon is rising at sunset. Some will see it as the moon is setting at sunrise. Some will see it in the middle of the night, right? Depends where on Earth you are, because Earth, of course, is spinning. And we get the blood moon, as it's called. Why? Because Earth's shadow, and also because the sunrises and sunsets from the sides of Earth are being projected onto the moon's surface. So in my personal cosmology, where moon is the reflection of spirit into this individual experience of soul, there's something here where Earth matter shadow on the soul reflector is about reminding us that these contemplations of spirit and soul that are available on Earth and matter to the human experience require a vessel with blood pumping through its veins. And it's an amazing thing to see a lunar eclipse. Eclipses in general really are about a quickening. So if you've ever seen a total lunar eclipse, it's amazing because you get out there, it's a bright full moon. There's not that many stars out, right? Because the moon is just claiming the sky with its light. And then here comes Earth's shadow. And one beautiful thing is once the full moon, the total eclipse happens, the shadow covering the entire lunar surface, the stars are all out, right? The Milky Way, if you're near a dark sky space, it's amazing. And that happens when? At new moon time, or around new moon time, when we can see all the stars, dark skies, right? So you're kind of getting a full month in like hours time. You will also see, in a sense, every phase of the moon in those hours. The shadow comes in to turn the moon kind of gibbous and half and crescent, and then departs. I will say it's not exactly the phases of the moon. You don't get the perfect square or straight line that you see at a half moon. You also, the shadow is kind of eating crescents out, right? So it's not a half moon plus a crescent, which is like a gibbous moon. But regardless, we have this experience of this waxing and waning, which takes a month for the full lunation, right, of a lunar solar cycle, all of the phases of the moon. And it happens in a few hours. Now, sometimes lunar eclipses are much longer than other ones. Why? Is it because the shadow is moving slower? I mean, it can be slightly. It's an interesting thing. But mostly it's because moon's distance from Earth is not always the same. Moon is orbiting, as all orbits are, not in a circle, but on an ellipse. And so part of moon's path is closest to Earth. We call that perigee, close to Earth. And part of moon's path is far from Earth. That's called apogee, far from Earth. Astrologically, you'll see the apogee on charts as the point we've come to call black moon Lilith. So if moon is near Lilith, it's far from the Earth. It's also slower in its journey, smaller in the sky. And if it's smaller, then the shadow of Earth is going to take more time and it's consuming or covering or, you know, reddening of the moon before it departs. Does that make sense? All right. Well, what if the moon and sun meet in a new moon near the nodes? And I interrupt myself to say, well, let's look at some of the math of this thing. Okay, lunar eclipses occur when a full moon, and that means what? On the chart, moon opposite sun, earth between moon and sun. When the full moon aligns within 12 degrees, 15 minutes of the lunar nodes. So the sun can be at the north node with the moon at the south node, or the sun can be at the south lunar node with the moon at the north lunar node. They'll always be opposite. Within 12¼ degrees, 12 degrees and 15 minutes, some type of eclipse is going to go down. Now, the sun finds her way between north and south nodes every 173 days, okay? So those are the timings of the eclipse seasons again. When sun is near a node, we'll have solar eclipses and lunar eclipses, usually a solar followed by a lunar, or a lunar followed by a solar. Sometimes, pretty rarely, like what starts tomorrow as I'm recording this, July 11th, 2018, we can have partial solar, total lunar, partial solar, a triple eclipse season. Why? I'll talk about that maybe at the end of this one, probably in the next video. So lunar eclipses occur when a full moon aligns within 12¼ degrees of the lunar nodes. If it is within 3½ degrees, okay, 3 degrees, 34 minutes, where there are 60 arc minutes in 1 degree, just like there are 60 minutes in an hour, right? If the moon aligns within 3 degrees and 34 minutes, about 3.5 degrees, it's a guaranteed total lunar eclipse, okay? If outside of 6 degrees, but in this window, between 6 degrees and 12¼ degrees, it's going to be a partial lunar eclipse. There, and the closer, the more total it is. There's this window in between. So between 3 degrees and 34 minutes and 6 degrees, moon or sun separated from the lunar nodes, it could be total or it could be partial. Why? Why could it go either way? The size of the moon, right? So if the moon is like 6 degrees away and very close, well, then the shadow's not as big relatively as if the moon is 6 degrees from a node and far away. You see what I'm saying? So the distance of moon from Earth, which varies every month, and you can look at lunar distance, which is directly proportional to lunar speed and lunar size, by looking in your chart of the moon's aspect to Black Moon Lilith. All right, more of that some other time. If moon comes between Earth and sun, a new moon, when sun is close to the nodes, we have this happening, a solar eclipse. Now, unlike the lunar eclipse, right, where everyone on the night side of Earth, here in this slide shown basically towards the right, you can see the shadow. It's always half of Earth is lit by the sun. So anywhere on the night side of Earth, if there's a lunar eclipse, everybody sees the lunar eclipse, weather allowing. There's some very extreme special conditions that I kind of want to share, and I'm just like, quiet nerd. Okay, so it's different for a solar eclipse. Why? Because the moon is 3/11 the size of Earth. I mean, you're taking a little pebble and putting it between the projector. It would be very much like this. You know, how much of my face is my fingers eclipsing for you right now, right? Whereas, you know, it's like that path. So you have to be in a very specific place of Earth to experience a solar eclipse. And we call this the eclipse path, the shadow path. There'll be places on Earth where you see a partial solar eclipse. Like right now, you're seeing my finger eclipse my eye, I think, right? Here, I'll say my nose so I don't get called out. So here's the eclipse of my nose from your point of view. Well, if somebody's looking up from up there on a different place of Earth, they're going to see this thing eclipsing my like chin. And only some of you are going to see the total eclipse. It's more fun to play with lights and do some model stuff. And I really recommend that. If you totally want to anchor in a body and have a sentient experience, you can set up little experiments in your home with light bulbs and things and like really come into the a sentient embodied knowing of what an eclipse is. And I so highly recommend going to witness these things when you have the opportunity to. I saw my first total solar eclipse last year on August 21st, 2017. I found one of the reasons why the priest class told us not to look is because you become an instant crackhead for them. I feel like I need to see every total solar eclipse ever from now on because it was the coolest thing I've ever seen. And I've seen some very cool things. Amazing. I mean, it was, as we speak about this quickening, it was sunset. The shadow came from the west to the east super fast, but then the entire sky like dimmed, right? I mean, it was like a 360-degree twilight. The sun obviously didn't set into the western horizon. It was like midday when I was witnessing it, but we had this like a sunset everywhere at once. I mean, you can never experience that. And the temperature dropped like 20 degrees Fahrenheit, all right? And fortunately, I knew about that, and I had a crew up there and told them, and we had hats and coats because you could really feel that. I mean, it's fast. The eclipse we witnessed where we were, it was only a minute and some in totality, and it gets colder before the total eclipse happens. And even if you're in a place on Earth where you're witnessing the eclipse, but it's not where you can see the total eclipse, like in this slide right here, people in like, you know, Northern Africa can see some eclipse, but only, oh, I don't know, maybe where's that, Angola? Anyway, only in that bit where it's darkest would see the total solar eclipse. But even before it was total, it started getting cold and then it got really cold. So we had this experience where it was night and then it was day. You know, I mean, animals do very interesting things. Flowers close during the minutes of the total solar eclipse and then open up again. What's that like? Night and day. What is it like when it drops 20 degrees and then, right? It's night and day. So just like during a lunar eclipse, which can be hours long, I mean, they always are some hours long, sometimes they're like 4 or 5. We have an entire month's worth of experience in all the lunar phases in those hours time. And during the solar eclipse, we have an entire day's worth of experience, sunset and sunrise, cold and hot, flowers close and open in like minutes time. So either way, energetically speaking, and that's not just an astrological consideration, okay? The syzygy of Earth, Moon, Sun, when near the nodes, and we have that alignment of the three things, the energetic happenings are about shadow, very clearly, and are about an acceleration, a quickening. Solar eclipses occur when sun is within 18.5 degrees of either north or south lunar node, and we have a new moon, okay? 18 degrees, 31 minutes. Now, it will be total or annular if within about 10 degrees, 9 degrees, 55 minutes. What's an annular eclipse? It's the ring of fire, right? So it's the same perfect syzygy of the center of Earth, center of moon, center of sun. I mean, that's like when it's exact the nodes, but within 10 degrees, it's enough to be a total solar eclipse. But an annular eclipse happens when the moon is further from Earth. And so its diameter or its disk is not apparently large enough from Earth's point of view to eclipse the entire sun. And so instead of just having the sun's corona outside of the disk, the moon's circumference, we see some of the sun ring, the ring of fire, an annular solar eclipse. Might be total or annular if between 9 degrees 55 minutes and 11 degrees 15 minutes, so between about 10 and 11 and a quarter degrees, might be total, might be annular. And that one's actually more about, it's about moon's distance from Earth, and it's also about Earth's distance from the sun, because Earth does not orbit sun in a circle either. In a way, it's a mutual dance between the two, heavily weighted towards the sun. And it's an ellipse. And actually in July, early July this year, 2018, it was July 6th. It's usually July 4th. Earth is furthest from the sun. This is called aphelion, far from sun. And in early January, usually January 2nd or 3rd, Earth is closest to the sun, perihelion. We say sun is 93 million miles from the Earth. It's a big distance. But when Earth is at perihelion closest to sun, sun is 91.5 million miles. When Earth is furthest from the sun, aphelion in July, sun is 94.5 million miles. So 1.5 million miles closer or further away. So interesting, it's 93 million miles and plus or minus 1.5 million miles. It's a swing of 3 million, which is a small percentage compared to 93 million, but it's still 1.5 million miles. And it's hard to see with the eye because the sun will burn and blind you, and even blind us from all of the stars and whatnot when she's up, right? But photographs will reveal that the sun is actually slightly smaller in July and bigger in January. It's also because Earth is closer in January, the sun is faster. Because Earth is faster, it's closer to the orbital source, the gravitational source, right? In July, the Earth is slower, the sun is slower. If the sun moved at the rate that it does through the zodiac in July, when Earth is furthest from sun at aphelion, our year would be 377 days, a year plus 12. If the sun moved at its daily rate when Earth is closest and therefore fastest, and therefore from Earth's point of view, sun is fastest, in January, then the year would be 365, a year minus 12. So it's an amazing thing. It actually gets close to the nodal year, and maybe I'll play with that if I have the opportunity to make an eclipse math magics video. The math of Earth, Moon, and Sun, and the strange mystical gateways that open when you explore are so profound. And for now, I'll just share this. This is an amazing book. Let me see if I can stop my my screen share so you can see it better. This is Sun, Moon, and Earth by Robin Heath. It's one of these wonderful wooden books. Highly recommend you explore that. There's another fantastic one, a wooden book by Jeff Stray, which is called The Mayan and Other Ancient Calendars. Super highly recommended. And I'm also just noticing that those titles came in backwards. I wonder how you saw that. I need to change some settings. Anyway, Mercury's about to retrograde. Mars already is, so we should be a little backwards right now, regardless. All right, share screen. Let's get back into the eclipse astronomy. So if sun is within, a new moon's within 18.5 degrees, a solar eclipse. If within about 10 degrees, a total or annular ring of fire solar eclipse. If between 11.25 and 10, could be total, annular, or partial. Can be hybrid, actually, which is a fun thing to explore. If between 11 degrees 15 minutes and 18 degrees 31 minutes, 11.25 degrees and 18.5 degrees, then it's going to be a partial solar eclipse. 400. This is an amazing thing. I mean, how can we experience this darkening and this diamond ring that we see when moon comes in to totally eclipse the sun? It's an amazing experience to see with your own face that moon is closer to us than sun. Now, we've learned that in school. It seems so obvious because we have. It's very easy to realize logically because moon orbits Earth and gets through all of the zodiac in about a month, where the sun takes a year to do so. But when you see this, regardless, moon coming between Earth and sun, and you see it with your own eyes, something gets unlocked. And I highly, highly, highly recommend you go and watch a solar eclipse in your lifetime and try to get to see a total solar eclipse when you can, friends. Moving my camera up here. Do this again. And wear the glasses and protect your eyes and all that, okay? But make sure if you're at a total solar eclipse to take the glasses off once the total thing has happened, and you'll know because it's 20 degrees colder and everywhere is shadow, all right? You don't need glasses at that point because the sun is completely eclipsed by the moon. Why can this happen? Well, the moon is 400 times closer to Earth than the sun and 400 times smaller than the sun to our eyes. The apparent size from Earth. We know the moon is much, much smaller than the sun. The sun is about 432,000 miles in radius. All right. The sun is about 432,000 miles in radius. 864,000 miles in diameter. And by the way, there's 86,400 seconds in a day. Math magics. 432,000 mile radius sun. And the moon is 2,160 miles in diameter, or 1,080 miles in radius, okay? Much, much smaller, obviously, than the sun. 3/11ths the Earth's diameter, but way closer to us. And this changes as we've discussed. The moon can be closer and further. Earth can be closer or further from the sun. But the average number is this magical thing of the 400 is that Earth is about 1/400th, or sorry, moon is 400 times smaller than the sun and 400 times closer. So to earthly eyes, they appear to be the same size, and we can experience the diamond ring in our sky, an amazing symbol of the sacred union, the marriage of spirit and soul. 108, an amazing one. Now this gets to be like 99.96% accurate for some of the things that I'll say here. This is an amazing image by Joe Dubs. You can check out at that link below. The moon is about 108 moons from Earth, about 108 lunar diameters from Earth. Not to scale. The sun is about 108 solar diameters from Earth, and the sun is about 108 Earth diameters in diameter. Now, 108 beads on the mala, prayer beads, rosary too. 108 names of God, or God's name is 108 letters, it's been said. 108 names of the divine goddess, 108 double stitches on a baseball, 108 square foot of grass required per free-range chicken, and we could go on and on and on like this. One thing I will say, in the churning of the ocean, before I get there actually, the moon traditionally associated with silver, well, the moon's radius is 1080 miles, and the atomic weight of silver is 108. 54 devas and 54 asuras pulling on the serpent rope Vasuki to churn the milk oceans, right? This is an image from Angkor Thom near Angkor Wat in Cambodia, a great temple that has these beautiful statues, also the gateway to the temple, and their bas-reliefs in many of the temples around, including at Angkor Wat, of the churning of the milk ocean, which has 54 asuras, 54 devas. Add them together, 108. And these numbers 54 and 108 are really key numbers in eclipse cycles. All right. This is something that I call your nodal return windows. The nodes, which speak to the path of the soul. And many astrologers do this in different ways. I do it very different than most modern astrologers do. I'm much more interested in the house of the north and south node than I am their sign. I feel that the signs that they are in are what Earth was doing in the future and past for all of us. But because the nodes take 18.618 years to transit the zodiac, and they do so retrograde, they're in the same sign for about 1.55, 1.5 years. And for me personally, that's just not specific enough to a soul for me to say you come from there. I'll say the group that you incarnated with, you're doing that, Earth's doing that, but I'm way more interested in the actual house of the nodes because that changes every 2 hours or so, depending on house and location and other things. I'm way more interested in Moon herself as the reflection of soul than I am her south node, but I work with those two together to look at that idea of soul path. And on the forward direction, I'm looking at the north node, mostly by house, also by sign and depositor, but mostly by house. And then that as a function to work with the rising sign, which is Earth. I'm fond of saying what's rising when you rose is rising within you, and that you can raise it up, but that's what you're here to learn. And the moon is the medicine you bring in with you. And I work with the south node past and the north node future to kind of embellish that. This is how I first learned in the shamanic astrology mystery school with Daniel Jamario, and I've shifted the way that I do it slightly from his kung fu, as we should always find our own way. And I study with many different astrologers and traditions that have many different views of the nodes. None disagree that they are very mysterious and important things in the natal chart. And I will say the nodes of all planets, not just the moon, are very important and things that we should start tuning into. And Dane Rujar and some modern astrologers like Mark Jones is a great example who's doing a lot of brilliant work with the lunar nodes now. Okay, so 18.618 years for the nodes. Let's call that 18 and a half to make it a little easier. So 18 and a half years old, the north node will be where it was when we were born, the south node where it was when we were born. And I should say north and south lunar nodes, and we usually don't add the lunar bit, but all planets have south and north nodes. But I will say from now on, if I say south or north node without mentioning a planet's name, I'm speaking about those of the moon, which is basically the standard in our world. Okay. So 18 and a half times 2 is 37. 18 and a half times 3 is 55 and a half. All right. So these are these nodal return windows. I'm very interested in, as the nodes realign at 18 and a half and 37 and 55 and a half and 76, I'm very interested in this question of, sorry, it's not 76, it's 74. I'm interested in this question of how long is the window open? And that's led me into this investigation that you basically see the results of here, these nodal return windows, where I'm seeing the nodal return itself in the middle of the kind of opportunity of the soul return, the path awareness, coming back into like a new chapter of opening up towards this awareness of where we're coming from and where we're going. Is that automatic? No, right? I mean, if you think about in modern culture, for many of us, what's happening between 18 and 19, the first period that you see here, I mean, we go to college, maybe pick a major. Other people choose to go travel. Other people decide they're not going to college. It's not part of their reality. And there's all sorts of reasons why that might be. Maybe they're just smart, you know, but we start to come into some idea of what do I want to study? What am I here to do? So when I sit with people at 37 or whatever, I often will say that, what's your major? Choose your major, you know, what are you here to learn and do? And I feel that is a fun way to play with the ideas of a nodal return. But the nodes will return to the exact position where they were 18.618 years after your birth in a moment, and then it's done. They might retrograde, as I call it, and come back across that point and give you 3 exact moments in a very short window of time. But either way, there's been disagreement or even lack of suggestion in the astrological community when I ask of how long is the no return period. Some say give it 3 months on either side. And what I'm finding is that the window is between the 2 eclipse cycles. There are many eclipse cycles, but the 2 eclipse cycles that we speak most about are the Saros eclipse cycle and the Metonic eclipse cycle, or just the Metonic cycle in general. What is that? What is a Saros cycle? That's where we're going next. They're about moon and sun, and the nodes are moon and sun. And the cool thing here, as you can see, is that as you gain in wisdom in life, the window, the periodicity, or the length of the window opens. So the first time it's 1 year, the second time 2 years, the third time 3 years, etc. Now at the bottom there, after 90 to 95, it should say 108 to 114, okay? But most of us don't live to be that old, which is why it doesn't show up on the slide. But we do astrology not just for people, but for all sorts of things, and I should have put that in there. But then where do you stop? But I should have at least put in the 108 because of this business, right? But 54 and 54, and you do see 54 show up there. That's called the Tri-Saros. Okay. The Saros cycle is about 18 years. It's actually 18.03 years. I'll tell you more about what that is. Nodal, 18.6 years, actually 18.618. You might know that the golden number is 1.618 and change. Anyway, Metonic, 19 tropical years, 19 solar years, 19 years exactly. All right. These are the cards in the tarot deck for moon and sun. Moon is 18 and sun is 19. What's in between? 18 and a half. Nodes, 18.618. And the 18 card's actually 18.03. And the 19 is actually 19. But oh my gosh, what are these people? These people are hip. And actually the 18, the 19, the nodal cycle, they're coded into Stonehenge and the pyramid and all over the realms, okay? The ancients knew this science better than we do. The Metonic moon cycle, named after a Greek astronomer called Meton, even though it's totally coded into the Babylonian calendar from many millennia before, at least centuries before. And again, it's in Stonehenge, which I will tell you is older than we're told it is, but let's just leave that there. It's in so many places, the Metonic mysteries. And so Metonic is what we say now. The deal is that there are 365.242.199 days a year. And the lunation, new moon to new moon on average, and it changes because you might have a slower moon starting near Lilith. You might have a faster sun in January, Earth closer to the sun, right? So it's an average, but the average lunation is 29.53059 days. Call that 29.5, okay? 29.53 times 12.368 is a solar year. So there are about 12.4 lunations, new moon to new moon a year. Now, we're not guaranteed to start a year with a new moon, right? This year, actually, we did start with a full moon. That's going to happen about every night. That's going to happen every 19 years. Why can I say that? Because a solar year, 365.242.199 times 19 is the same amount of days as the lunation, new moon to new moon, or full moon to full moon, or first quarter to first quarter, or waxing sextile to waxing sextile, whatever. 29.53 days times 235 equals the same amount of days as 19 years. This is a key to the Jewish calendar, which is actually rooted in the Babylonian calendar, to the Chinese calendar. The truth is, there are about 12.368 lunations a year. So the lunar year, 12 new moons, is 355 days. It's about 11 days short of a solar year. Every 3 years, the lunar year and the solar year kind of sync, but it really takes 19 years where you have 7 months on top of 12 months per year. And that's like more mathematics than I wanted to share here in calendar study. But again, I really recommend these wooden books, Jeff Stray's The Mayan and Other Ancient Calendars, as well as this book, Sun, Moon, and Earth by Robin Heath. Okay, so the Metonic cycle, this isn't only for eclipses at all. In fact, it rarely is. A metonic string of eclipses, as I like to call it, there can only be 4 or 5 of these. Why? Because the nodal cycle is not 19 years, it is 18.618 years, okay? So if you have a new moon today on the same calendar date in 19 years, you will have a new moon. If it's very close to midnight, it could be the calendar day before or after, but you're going to have the same phase of the moon in 19 years. So if there's a solar eclipse today in 19 years, there's going to be a new moon because a solar eclipse is a new moon. It's not necessarily going to be a solar eclipse. Why? I mean, imagine that this new moon is like 18 degrees from the nodes. It has to be within 18 and a half to be a solar eclipse, right? So it is a solar eclipse, but in 19 years, when the nodes on an 18 and a half year cycle, 18.618, it's separating, you see. So the metonic strings of eclipses for solar eclipses, they're in 4 or 5, and that's it, separated by exactly 19 years. If you look at your solar return chart, your 19th birthday, when the sun is in the exact same degree of the zodiac, you will find that the moon is very close to where the moon was when you were born. All right, the moon will return to the same degree of the zodiac where it was when you were born every 27.3 days on average. That's the moon's sidereal cycle of the stars aligning to the same star, the same degree of the zodiac. The moon will return to the same phase that she was in when you were born, on average every 29.53 days. The moon's synodic cycle, which is the dance of moon and sun from Earth's point of view. Synod meaning meeting, so we usually do that from the meeting of moon and sun, in other words, new moon. And that happens every 29 and a half days. So every month, moon will return to the same sign, same degree where she was when you were born. Every month, she'll be in the same phase that she was when you were born, but only every 19 years, the metonic cycle, where will moon be in the same sign and the same phase at the same time. Check it out. Your 19th solar return, your 38th solar return, 57th, the 19th, 76 is the next one. Now, the difference, and these are averages, right? I mean, it's a long period of time, so the average is pretty good, but not exactly, but it's 1.25 hours off. So you'll find that it's not exact. It depends what season you were born in. It depends how fast the Earth was moving, and therefore the sun in our skies, as I was discussing earlier, it depends how close to Earth moon was when you were born, and that changes not on the 19-year cycle itself. That's called the animalistic cycle. Let's leave that there for now. The mathematics of Earth, moon, and sun are endlessly amazing, and they open wide windows of astrological correspondences in this astronomical understanding, which is why I'm so fond of teaching this stuff. All right, so 19 on one side, metonic, 18 on the other, and that's the Saros. 223 lunations of 29.53059 days of average lunation, new moon to new moon. It's about 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. This is the breath of the Saros family, the pulse of the Saros heart. The Saros is about eclipse families. They come around every 18 years, 11 days, 8 hours. That can vary slightly depending on things like Earth speed and moon speed when the first new moon or whatever was, okay? But that's the general trip, all right? So every 18 years. Now the 11 days, we'll move it 11 days ahead in the calendar next time it comes around, right? So your prenatal eclipse, for example, astrologically speaking, when you turn 18 or before you turn 18, it's going to be 11 days later. It's going to be about 11 degrees of the zodiac ahead of that last one, because on average, the sun moves 1 zodiacal degree per day. 8 hours. The Earth spins in 24. So the 8 hours thing is going to take it a third of the way around the globe. And this is one of the very beautiful and key things about 54 years, the triceros, okay? Because 18 years, 11 days, 8 hours times 3 is 54 years, 33 days, interesting solar number 33, and 24 hours, so actually 34 days. So it's going to be back in the same time zones of Earth. It won't be in the exact same place for all sorts of considerations. Most importantly, these eclipse families not only snake about the Earth, but also up and down. Well, either up or down. So a north node eclipse, a north node solar eclipse, let's say, when a new moon meets at the north node. The first eclipse of the family, and the pulse is 18 degrees, 11 days, 8 hours. They last on average for 71 or 72 of these things. In other words, about 1,260 years, okay, coming around every 18.03 years. If it's a north node eclipse, it starts with a super partial, just barely, you know, from the very like North Pole, barely seeing a tiny sliver of moon eclipse the sun. And if a tree falls and no one's there to hear it, yada, yada, yada. But then it will descend, coming around every 18.03 years, snaking around and down the globe, and will end at the South Pole. A south node eclipse starts at the South Pole, and over about 1,280 years will end at the North Pole. When it's closer to Earth's temperate zones, closer to the equator, it's more total eclipses. So it starts very partial, can get annular or hybrid, go total. Not all of them go total, but most of them do. Maybe we'll go annular again, and then head into partials, and then very partial, and then it's gone. At the very end of an eclipse cycle, usually a new one comes in to replace it. That's a triple eclipse season. That's what's coming our way starting tomorrow. All right, and I want to get into sharing some of those charts, but I'm going to do that in another video again, because I want this to stand for something I can share when people ask about eclipses in general. I go into a lot more detail than this in my classes, and we actually do it in ways where we take much more time, because this can be a lot of information at once, especially in our scholastic shenanigans and the way they program us to hate numbers and be afraid of maths, etc. Yeah. So one of the things that I'm here to do is first kind of heal that wound, which is a pretty collective thing, and bring in a love for numbers by teaching things like that is the one. Anyway, we're going to watch here an entire Saros cycle. This is Saros series 145. It last came around on August 21st, 2017. It was a total solar eclipse that was the first to run from coast to coast in the United States for a long, long time, since the early 1800s. The first total solar eclipse in the United States since 1979. It was 1918 actually that it ran from coast to coast, the last one. And so we thought this was a big deal, and this was the one I got to see and got cold and all that stuff, and it was amazing. Okay, so what we see here is that this family began in 1639. We will see that it runs for about 1,260 years. And it started way up there at the North Pole, and it's very partial. So on the left, we're going to see where the eclipse was on Earth when they start becoming more total. We'll see a shadow path. I'm seeing below, this one is 75 eclipses, so longer than the average 1,260 or 1,280 years. On the right, we're going to see where these are in the chart. On a natural chart, which is 0 Aries on the cusp of the first, right, whole sign. And so here's this first one. It was at 13 degrees, 49 minutes Capricorn. Many astrologers will suggest the entire energy of the whole family can be seen from this chart. And so maybe I should show the whole thing here. I'm not going to rap about that right now. 13 degrees, 49 minutes, and the North Node at 27 degrees, 56 minutes. So 27 degrees to 13 degrees of the next sign is 16 degrees and minus about 7 minutes. So this is 15 degrees and 53 minutes away. So it's within 18 degrees and 31 minutes, right? So we know this is going to be an eclipse, and it's a partial eclipse. And what you're going to see is that there will be a new eclipse. We're just going to go frame by frame through 18.03 years, okay? And you'll see that while the eclipse is moving, the new moon is moving about 11 degrees ahead in the zodiac, so we can expect the next one from here, 14 Capricorn, to be in 25 Capricorn. The nodes are approaching the eclipse, and then they'll pass the eclipse. Right. And so the eclipse gets stronger, 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 stronger. The most total eclipse of this particular series is in the year 2334, I believe. And I'm very interested in that one as speaking the signature for the eclipse. It's midlife moment. And then they'll go partial again. And so because this is a north node eclipse, we see the solar eclipse there at the north node. It starts at the north pole of Earth, and it's going to snake down and around, okay, and cruise. So one thing I'll point your eyes out to, let's see, like last year it came to the Americas in 2017. Well, the Triceros before that, 54 years before that, was 1963. And you'll find that was also in the same time zones, same longitudes of Earth, the Americas, but not the same latitudes because it started up here and it's on its way down, right? So between 1963, where it went through Alaska and Canada and just barely touched Maine in the United States, and 2017, 54 years later, where we get the 8-hour Triceros thing, bringing it back to the same longitudes, it's now lower in latitude on Earth and came through the continental United States. 54 years from 2017, which is what, 2771? Yes, it's going to also be in the Americas again, but it will be down in Mexico and Central America, I believe. So that idea of it comes back to the same zone every Triceros, or 3 of the 18.03 year cycles, but is either, if it's a north node eclipse, getting lower every time on its way to end at the South Pole, or if it's a south node eclipse, getting higher in latitude or more north in latitude every time, in a way more towards the future every time, and ending at the North Pole. Okay. So let's check these things out. And maybe I'll shut my mouth for a little bit and play a little saxophone as we do. and ending at the South Pole many, 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 many years later. An amazing thing, these Saros families. Remember, the metonic strings can only happen for either 4 or 5 19-year periods. So we're looking at what, 76? So anyway, some in the 70s and the 90s. My maths aren't working so well right now. But I want to do that. So it's either 4 times 20 minus 4, which is 76, or 5 times 20 minus 5, which is 95. Okay, so either 76 years worth every 19 years, or 95 years worth every 19 years. Here with the Saros cycle, every 18.03 years for more than 1,000 years, 1,260 or 1,280 on average. And this particular one we're looking at even longer than that. A pretty amazing thing, okay? And somewhere between the 18 and the 19, we have these, where am I trying to go? We have these nodal return periods. So I'm looking at the Saros 18 on one side, the Metonic 19 on the other side, and in between 18.618, the nodal return as these windows. Okay, so if you're 18, 19, turning 18, turning 19, if you're 37, if you're 54, 55, 56, 57, eclipses are going to be more strong because it has a relationship with the patternings of sun and moon. That doesn't mean every eclipse isn't strong for every one of us and the entire earth. And some eclipse families will be like aligned to our birth sun or moon or nodes or Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, whatever. But especially with moon, sun, and nodes, because those are the eclipse things, they're very happening. And you might have like, you know, the moon at 10 degrees Cancer and Mercury at 21 degrees Cancer. Well, then a Saros family could align to your moon and then 18 years later align to your Mercury, which is 11 degrees later, you see. There's all sorts of ways we can connect to the power of eclipses, and we should celebrate them all. All right, let's do some more stuff. I will say that moonblink.info, moonblink, like the moon blinking, lunar eclipse, right? .info is my favorite place for eclipse research. There's an eclipse search function on the left you see here. You can type in any year, and that will show you all of the eclipses of that year. You can click on the eclipse, and it will show you where it is visible. And for a lunar eclipse, it's in the light bit. For a solar eclipse, it will actually show you the shadow moving west to the east on the Earth. And then it'll show you the member of the family it is. And if you're like in a specific place, you'll see 30% of the sun eclipsed. Here's this one that came to America in 2017, and it was of Saros series 145, which started in 1639. This is the one where we just watched all the eclipses of. And then it will run all the way until 2991, as we saw, and we'll finish up at the South Pole. So this is where I mined every image of those eclipses, and then I made all of those charts and made that animation. There's the middle one, the most total of them all. That, by the way, is probably a good time for me to say, the animations that you're seeing here have taken me literally hundreds of hours. So if you're enjoying this, if you feel like you're receiving something and you would like to give back, and you can afford to do so, in no way a requirement, but I would love for you to go over to morethanastrology.com and you'll find a donate button there. Any donations, $1, $100 million, they're all appreciated with so much gratitude. It's a lot of work, these things that we do as astrologers, and all people, the way we give our gifts, and it's always nice to be received. Another thing you can do to show your gratitude is like this video. Maybe leave a comment. Did you learn something here? Maybe share the video around, whether you're watching this live on Facebook right now or watching in YouTube. Later on, subscribe to the YouTube channel, Gemini Brett, or at morethanastrology.com. You will also find on the home page, a link to my newsletter, which I very rarely send. I'm much more into making videos and stuff like this. Okay, so that was me taking the opportunity to babble instead of sharing a lot of these things that are shown here, because I made them for more kind of specific shows. But here's 2071, and so there's that eclipse path of the Triceros, and you can see now it's further south. Okay, so one more thing we'll do before we move on here, 2018, where we have lunar, solar, and then solar, lunar, solar, a triple eclipse. So 5 eclipses in this series. And the solar, the first one, started back in the about 8th century and ran till 2054. And the second, Saros 155, started in 1928 and will run all the way till 2992. So when you have a triple eclipse, partial solar, total lunar, partial solar, it will always be the ending of one long Saros family in the beginning of another solar Saros family that came to take the place. It doesn't usually happen on the same year that one ends and the other began. Like in this case, 1928 was the beginning of the one that will take the place of the one that's still alive but ends in 2054. Some astrologers just call them by the same name. There's different conventions in the astronomical communities, both for good reasons. I'm not doing that now. We'll do one more kind of fun technical thing. So I can share this when I get 100 emails about, hey, why did the eclipse shadow move from the west to the east? That makes no sense. People last year actually said this means the earth is flat, which is ridiculous. Astrologers said that, and because they don't understand the fundamental astronomy of astrology. And I'm about teaching not only the astronomy, but sacred astronomy. So in my courses, we do this in a much more experiential, grounded, and very spiritual way to try to reconnect to those who built the stone circles and the pyramids. The information they held, I literally will suggest, is beyond our own when it comes to these matters, despite modern day satellites and whatnot. I see my light come shining from the west down to the east. Any day now, I shall be released. The great Bob Dylan song, also recorded by the band, by Elvis. I shall be released. And I love this in this terms of eclipse. The light and actually the shadow comes from the west to the east. Now we know the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, as does the moon and Mercury and Venus and Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, etc., and all the stars, right? Why? Because the earth is spinning west to east. So why would it be that the moon eclipses the sun from the west to the east at a solar eclipse when they're both moving from the east to the west? And we get into in astrology what we call the primary and the secondary motions. The primary motion is the diurnal motion, the daily motion. What is our primary astronomical and therefore our primary astrological experience? Day and night, right? One is cold, one is hot, wet, dry, dark, light, and you only have to live for 24 hours time to experience this profound cycle of yin and yang, the same cycle of yin and yang that is experienced during the course of a year. The secondary motions, you may know in astrology, we have a great technique called secondary progressions, where we relate days and years. We can do this because a day and a year, primary and secondary, they're devoted to the same cycle of yin and yang. Sunrise is like spring, midday, like summer, sunset, like autumn, midnight, like winter, see? So the primary motion is the spinning of the earth, and the houses reflect this in ways, and it brings us such hits as sunrise and sunset. The sun rises in the east because earth is falling in that direction. The secondary motion, interestingly enough, is what astrology, at least today, is primarily concerned with. That is the orbital motion, the yearly motion, the seasons. And from Earth's point of view, as Earth is orbiting sun also from the west to the east, we notice the sun moving from the west to the east through the constellations and the signs and yes, they are different things of the zodiac. So Aries to Taurus to Gemini to Cancer, etc., that is a west to east motion. Wait, it's, I guess, going to take a second to open up. Here we go. So here's a natural chart wheel, and here's the secondary motion. As the Earth orbits the sun, we see the sun moving from the west to the east through the constellations and signs of the zodiac. From Scorpio to Sagittarius to Capricorn to Aquarius. Look at them at night, the constellations, and you'll see that Aries is to the west of Taurus. The sun and the secondary motion is moving west to east. The daily motion is sun rising in the east, setting in the west, no matter where you are in the world. In the northern hemisphere, culminating in the south. In the southern hemisphere, culminating in the north. But either way, rising in the east and resting in the west. Why? Because Earth spins west to east, setting in the west, because Earth is rising in that direction. Okay, so now we'll look just at the sun, moon, and node here on August 20th, 2017 in the PM hours, the day before the solar eclipse I was talking about before, that I called Neil Diamond playfully because it was coming to America. Maybe you know that Neil Diamond song. We saw the diamond ring in the sky, and Neil spelled this way because it was conjoined Regulus, the royal star. So do we kneel down before the king? Okay. Let's set the stage here. The moon moves faster than the sun through the zodiac, yes? A+. Sun taking about exactly a year to go through, and moon about a month, 27.3 days. Here we see the sun at 28 degrees, 21 minutes Leo, and the moon at 21 degrees, 14 minutes Leo. Lower degrees, about 7 degrees, 7 minutes away. Which means moon is applying to conjoin the sun. This is a new moon time, and it is about to happen. If moon was on the other side of the sun at 29 degrees Leo, that means the new moon had already happened and the moon is separating from the sun. This is why it's important in astrology to speak the name of the faster moving planet first when we speak about aspects like a conjunction or a square or a sextile. I stop myself because some would say a conjunction's not an aspect, but it's something entirely different, but let's not get caught up in those technicalities right now. So moon here is applying to sun. In other words, it's about to be new moon. It's the end of the lunation that started about a month before, which actually in 2017 was also in Leo. There were 2 Leo new moons, and the second one was a total solar eclipse. Note that moon is going to meet sun in the 29th degree of Leo within 5 degrees of the node. If you remember, we saw earlier, if it's within 3.5 degrees, guaranteed solar eclipse. If it's within 6 degrees, it might be a solar eclipse, and this one was. It was a solar eclipse that in its longest breath in the path of totality was about 2.5 minutes long, a little less. Some solar eclipses can be more than 7 minutes long, some total solar eclipses. Why? It would be closer to the node, so a stronger alignment of the center syzygy of the 3 things, earth, matter, moon, soul, sun, spirit, and probably the moon is closer to earth on the opposite side in the chart of Black Moon Lilith, who I don't show listed here. All right. See, astronomy's fun. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to play this through time. We are going to see together moon and sun from this 4th, 5th house location come across the IC, moving in the east to west motion, the primary motion, the clockwise motion. This is why clocks do this. Rising in the east and going to set in the west. Between the time of the rise and set here in Seattle, Washington, where we didn't see a total solar eclipse, but almost one, and that's why I went to Idaho personally. But you will see that the moon will cross the sun. While together they are moving from the east to the west, they are also in the secondary motion, moving from the west to the east, from Leo to Virgo. For the sun, it's going to take a couple of days for that to happen. I don't think we'll watch it. But for the moon, it's going to take some hours. The moon spends about 22.3 days in a sign. And the moon will cross the sun at Regulus in the last degrees of Leo and then cross into Virgo from the west to the east. So together, while they are rising in the east and going to set in the west, moon rising first and then crossing the sun, and sun sets first. They move together from the east to the west, but the shadow motion of moon's crossing is from the west to the east. And I can't whistle right now. And there's the eclipse. And now through the secondary motion, moon in Virgo, right? Okay. So I can just track what minute that was. And when people ask me next time, why did it move from the west to the east? Yeah, I'll just refer them to this video instead of writing a long response. Too many of those last year. And just enough. And thank you for asking, friends. I'm so glad you care. All right. Well, this is my website, morethan.astrology.com. I mentioned it earlier. There's a donate button if you would like to give back. I would appreciate that so much. But liking this, sharing this, you'll find a services page on my website if you'd like to book private consultation. It's one of my favorite things to do. Maybe even more than teaching, I don't know, but I teach as well. And on the page, you'll see this Sacred Astronomy web course link. And you will find Sacred Astronomy for Astrologers, an adventure that's still being built. Eventually, it will be 33 hours. I gave this course live, and now I'm creating a very fun mystery school style web course where there are about 7 to 20-minute videos. At the end, it ends with a test question, very simple. The answer to the test question is the password to the next video, and there will be 72 in all, which is one of the Saros numbers, but more importantly, in this case, a number of precession of the equinoxes. That's a tale for another time. It's the average of 54 and 108, you know. But the first 12 lessons are free. So I hope you'll go over there and play. morethan.astrology.com or morethan.astrology.com/sacredastro. You'll find links to my Facebook. I'm Brett Joseph there, or Gemini Brett. My Facebook biz page is Arts of the Chart. You'll find a link to my YouTube. I hope you'll give it a like and subscribe and follow. I tend to put more videos up on YouTube and not just stream live on Facebook because it's so easy to do. You'll find a way to email me, and further down the page, the mailing list, and also the Sacred Astro web course where you can go play with the first 12 lessons for free. I will also be teaching on Earth, so you can stay tuned at the events page on my website. There's one coming up in Tucson, a 3-day Astronomy for Astrologers intensive. We're going to have a lot of fun in the classroom, a lot of animations. We're going to build a sundial, a medicine wheel, and we will be playing in Tucson, Arizona under dark skies around new moon time. At new moon time, every visible planet will be visible. It's going to be amazing. It doesn't cost that much. And if you're down with the Organization for Professional Astrology, OPA, it's also part of OPA's certification program. You don't have to come down there if you want to get certified, whatever. If you want to learn how the sky works and reconnect nature with our astrology, re-nature our astrology so we can ground into and embody the roots of the rules and the proofs of the equations we use in correspondences as astrologers to heal and feel and know and grow. This is a place for you. Go to OPA Astrology. You can see the website at the bottom there, opaastrology.org, and you will see about iAstrologer. 2 parts. The first part devoted to helping astrologers present themselves and their websites and grow their business. And the second part is many different options. One is astronomy for astrologers with me. Come join me. You don't have to do part 1 to do part 2. You can just come play with stars, but do it all. And I'll see you in the desert at this beautiful hotel with beautiful people. Come hang out. All right. Thanks for spending some time with me today. One more thing. The nodal window is opening up. because between the Saros and the Metonic, it gets wider. So as we're moving into the future, the soul path widens. And now, not everyone's going to experience this. Not everyone's really going to even experience their natal chart, right? You are choosing to dance to the song of your soul, and we're blessed to have you do so. Thank you. Yeah. As you continue to walk your path of wisdom and your way, you will notice that these opportunities of the nodal returns open up and open up. And the truth is, every year, solar eclipse, every new moon, and especially these eclipses, they are accelerated points, quickening points. I hope I explained some natural reasons why that is earlier on. The nodal reversal windows, the nodal returns 18.618 years, and therefore at about 9.3 years, the north node is at the south node from where you were born, and vice versa. That's called a nodal reversal. And my general feeling, because well, I'll just say this, that the nodal returns are opening up this forward direction. The nodal reversals are opening up the past direction. And because the past is when we're closer to it when we're young, I think that those windows are wider when we're young, and they start getting narrower as the ones in front of us are narrow when we're young and start getting wider. So here are some dates to play with. If you are in any of these age groups, I will say pay specific attention to the eclipses, and especially in the on the nodal return side, because those eclipses around in this year will be the same as those of the family of your birth. moonblink.info/eclipse/search is an amazing place. Thank you, astronomers, for the data to go play and find out which eclipse cycles were around in the year of your birth, when they will come around next, where they will come around next. Go see them, where they were in the year of your birth, before your birth. Is that place special to you? Have you been yet? Check it out. It's amazing things. All right. So we end somewhere here. Good. Thanks so much, friends. I will see you in space. This is your friendly astronaut, Gemini Brett, signing off.